The transmission originates at 9:17 a.m. local time and lasts 11 seconds. It goes out on 500 kilohertz, the international maritime distress frequency, monitored continuously by every Coast Guard station, every maritime rescue coordination center, and every commercial vessel with a functioning radio receiver within its propagation range across the northern Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf. The signal is a digitally encoded MAYDAY, formatted to the IMO standard for digital selective calling distress alerts, carrying the Maritime Mobile Service Identity Number assigned to USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN-72, the Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, currently operating in support of Operation Epic Fury, approximately 290 miles southeast of the Strait of Hormuz. The Distress Alerts position field contains coordinates placing the Lincoln 34 miles east of its actual position. The nature of distress field carries code 01, fire or explosion. The supplementary information field, appended in voice format, contains 22 words in American English spoken by a male voice with no identifiable accent. This is USS Abraham Lincoln. We have sustained multiple weapons impacts. We have fire in the hangar bay. All hands to emergency stations. It is 9:17 a.m. on March 11th. The transmission reaches the Oman Maritime Rescue Coordination Center's monitoring position at 9:17:08 a.m. It reaches the Dubai Maritime Authority's listening watch at 9:17 and 9 seconds a.m. It reaches the automated monitoring system operated by the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center at 9:17:11 a.m. By 9:18 a.m., the transmission has been received by 14 separate maritime monitoring entities across 4 countries and has entered the global maritime distress notification network that was built over decades to ensure that a vessel in extremis is never more than seconds away from a response. By 9:19 a.m., the first social media post referencing an emergency aboard a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea has been published. The post's author is a Dubai-based maritime shipping news aggregator with 340,000 followers that monitors distress frequencies as part of its commercial maritime safety coverage. The post reads, "Urgent. Distress signal received from USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN-72. Reporting fire following weapons impact. Arabian Sea, 0917 local." Post links to the DSC alert metadata. The post receives 2,300 shares in 90 seconds. By 9:21 a.m., 3 regional news organizations have published breaking news items. One carries the headline, U.S. aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln reports weapons hits and fire in Arabian Sea. Another, breaking, U.S. warship in distress signal after reported attack. The third, more cautious in its language but no less consequential in its reach, publishes, distress signal from USS Abraham Lincoln received amid ongoing Iran conflict. Details unclear. All 3 are accurate in reporting that a distress signal was received. All 3 are accurate in reporting its content. None of them can verify whether the signal is genuine. By 9:23 a.m., the S&P 500 futures market, trading in extended session, drops 1.4% in 90 seconds. Brent crude oil spikes $4.80 per barrel in the same window. The U.S. dollar weakens against the euro, the Swiss franc, and the Japanese yen simultaneously. Gold moves $23 per troy ounce in the first 3 minutes, before the correction slows the trajectory. Defense sector equities move in the opposite direction. A reflexive market response to the perceived escalation of a conflict that has been driving premium pricing in those stocks since February 28th. In the commodity markets, natural gas moves sharply on renewed concerns about Strait of Hormuz transit security that the correction will eventually contain, but cannot immediately reverse in instruments that have been pricing conflict risk for 11 days and needed only a catalyst to reprice sharply upward. The 90-second window between the S&P drop's initiation and its deceleration the window during which algorithmic trading systems that monitor news feeds and social media for market-moving keywords are processing the original alert before the correction enters the same feeds, will be studied by the Treasury Department's Office of Financial Research in a post-incident review that classifies the event as a Category 3 information-induced market disruption. Measurable, recoverable, and attributable to the propagation speed differential between a false primary signal and its correction through the same distribution architecture. The review's core finding is not that the market is uniquely vulnerable to this class of operation. It is that every information-based market is structurally vulnerable to any false signal that can achieve primary distribution faster than the correction can achieve secondary distribution, and that the differential between those two speeds in the current media and social platform environment is measured not in hours, but in minutes, sometimes in seconds. By 9:24 a.m., the correction has reached all three original news organizations. The first correction is published at 9:24:47 a.m., the second at 9:25 and 11 seconds a.m., the third at 9:25:33 a.m. All three are accurate, appropriately prominent, and reach their audiences in the same distribution channels as the original reports. The social media amplification analysis conducted 3 days after the incident counts 47,300 shares of the original three breaking news items in the period from 9:19 a.m. to 9:35 a.m. The three correction items accumulate 6,800 shares in the same window. The ratio holds at approximately 7:1 through the following 48 hours, regardless of how prominently the corrections are featured in the publishing organization's own social distribution. The correction closes the factual gap. It does not close the amplification gap. These are not the same thing, and the distinction between them is the operational foundation on which the IRGC built its information architecture for this operation. At 9:17:30 a.m., 30 seconds after the transmission, the Lincoln's own communications watch reads the DSC alert in the automatic monitoring log. The communications officer on watch has been in this role for 2 years and has managed dozens of routine maritime distress events during deployments. What he reads at 9:17:30 a.m. is a distress alert carrying his own ship's MMSI number. The ship is not on fire. The ship has not sustained weapons impacts. The ship is conducting routine flight operations in morning light with no damage, no casualties, and no emergency of any kind. He keys the transmitter at 9:18 a.m. and broadcasts a distress alert cancellation on 500 kilohertz. All stations, this is USS Abraham Lincoln CVN 72. Disregard previous distress alert. Repeat disregard previous distress alert. Vessel isn't in distress. Previous transmission was unauthorized. Out. The cancellation reaches the same monitoring network. It is timestamped 9:18:11 a.m., 1 minute and 3 seconds after the original alert. In the mathematics of maritime emergency communications, 1 minute and 3 seconds is an eternity. The original alert has already been received, processed, and published by entities that operate faster than the correction can reach. The correction will eventually reach all of them. The correction will eventually appear alongside the original alert in every news item, in every social media post, in every trading system's news feed. But the correction arrives into a market that has already moved, into news cycles that have already published, and into the institutional memory of every analyst, trader, journalist, and foreign ministry official who read the original transmission first and will always carry, at some level below conscious articulation, the 90-second window when they believed that a U.S. aircraft carrier had been struck. The U.S. Navy's Public Affairs Office issues an official statement at 9:22 a.m., confirming that the Lincoln is undamaged, that the distress signal was unauthorized, and that an investigation has been opened. The statement reaches the news organizations that published the original reports. All three issue corrections. The corrections are published. The corrections are shared. The corrections generate fewer shares than the original reports by a ratio that the social media analytics firm that will later study the incident at the request of an unnamed government client will document as 7-to-1. For every person who shared the correction, 7 people had already shared the original. The correction closes the information gap. It does not erase it. In Washington, the first phone call referencing the transmission reaches a senior National Security Council staff member at 9:19 a.m., while the corrections are still being drafted. The call is from a congressional office requesting information about the status of the carrier and whether Epic Fury's operational tempo should be reviewed in light of reported combat damage. The NSC staff members answer that the transmission was false, that the ship is undamaged, that operations are continuing on schedule, is delivered with the confidence appropriate to someone who has already verified the ship's status through classified channels. The congressional office is satisfied. 3 other congressional offices call within the next 11 minutes with the same question. 2 foreign embassies contact the State Department's duty officer. 1 allied head of government places a call to the White House Situation Room at 9:28 a.m. seeking personal confirmation that the carrier has not been struck, citing concern from their country's energy sector, which has moved sharply on the transmitted news. The Situation Room confirms the carrier's undamaged status to the Allied leader at 9:31 a.m. The aggregate of these contacts, 6 congressional offices, 2 embassies, 1 Allied head of government, all within 14 minutes of an 11-second radio transmission, represents the operational output that the IRGC's planners designed the operation to produce. Not a sunk ship. Not a disrupted strike. The disruption of every institution, market, and partner nation watching the conflict for the duration of time required to consume attention, generate uncertainty, and introduce the possibility of political pressure into the operational calculus of an adversary, conducting a sustained air campaign against your country. 14 minutes of that possibility, multiplied across financial markets, legislative bodies, and allied governments simultaneously, has a measurable aggregate cost. The IRGC's planners understood the cost structure. They built the operation to exploit it at the lowest possible operational investment. The 14-minute window between 9:17 a.m. and 9:31 a.m. is the operation's entire kinetic equivalent impact surface. No ship moved. No aircraft altered course. No strike was delayed. But $2.4 billion in financial transactions executed on false information during that window. Congressional staff spent time on calls that produced no intelligence value and consumed attention that was needed elsewhere. 2 allied embassies filed inquiries that their foreign ministries will have to manage in their own reporting chains, regardless of how quickly the correction arrived. 1 allied head of government now carries the memory of a morning when they needed personal confirmation from the White House that a carrier was still afloat. That memory does not disappear when the correction is published. It becomes part of the risk calculus that government carries into the next escalation decision, and the one after that, and everyone that follows. None of these impacts are catastrophic in isolation. The market recovered within the hour. The corrections were published. The congressional offices were satisfied. The Allied leader was reassured. The ship was undamaged throughout. But the aggregate of those impacts across 14 minutes represents something that the post-incident assessment will characterize as a precision information operation. An attack on the confidence of every institution, market, and partner nation that was watching the conflict, executed at the cost of 1 unauthorized radio transmission that took 11 seconds to broadcast and required no kinetic capability whatsoever. The technical investigation of the transmission opens at 9:20 a.m., 3 minutes after the distress alert was received, and proceeds on 2 parallel tracks. The first track is the signal itself. Where did it originate? What equipment was used to generate it? And how was the Lincoln's MMSI number obtained and incorporated into a compliant DSC alert format. The second track is the access question. The DSC format's authentication architecture is not encrypted, but generating a compliant alert with a specific vessel's MMSI number and position requires knowledge of the MMSI value, the DSC message structure, and access to transmitting equipment capable of operating on 500 kilohertz at a power level sufficient to reach the propagation range the alert achieved. The signal's origin is geolocated by 10:44 a.m. through triangulation, using direction-finding data from 3 maritime monitoring stations that log not only DSC alert content, but the bearing angle of incoming signals. The 3 bearing intersections place the transmission origin at a position 127 nautical miles east-northeast of the Lincoln's actual position. Open water. No vessel traffic visible on the maritime surveillance picture. No AIS, contact at or near the coordinates. The origin platform is not in the current operational picture. It transmitted once and was gone from detection range before the triangulation was complete. The platform's absence from every available surveillance layer, AIS, radar, overhead, is not accidental. It is the operational design of a system built to transmit once and disappear, either because the platform was itself unmanned and autonomous, or because it operated without any emission that the surveillance network was configured to detect. The MMSI question is straightforward. The MMSI number for USS Abraham Lincoln 338202300 is registered in the International Maritime Organization's public database and obtainable by any person with an internet connection in under 2 minutes. Its availability is not an access problem. The access problem is the voice content. 22 words of American English that include the phrase hangar bay, the term emergency stations, and the specific construction multiple weapons impacts. These are not how a non-Navy person would naturally describe fire aboard a warship and a request for general emergency response. They reflect knowledge of the Lincoln's internal nomenclature and the standard vocabulary of U.S. Navy shipboard emergency communications. The forensic linguistics team that analyzes the voice recording at 11:30 a.m. identifies 2 specific phrases that appear verbatim in a classified document. The Lincoln's own Shipboard Emergency Procedures Manual, which carries a controlled distribution list of fewer than 400 individuals. Those 2 phrases do not appear in any unclassified equivalent document. Their presence in the broadcast implies that someone within the distribution chain of that specific manual either provided the text directly or provided access to the document itself. That finding goes into a separate investigation file. It will not close quickly. The post-incident period reveals additional dimensions of the operation's design that were not visible in the immediate response window. The timing, 9:17 a.m. on March 11th, was chosen because it falls within the pre-market trading hours for European equity markets, which at that time of day carry higher volatility and lower liquidity than full-session trading, magnifying the price movement produced by a given volume of fear-driven transactions. An event-based market disruption at 9:17 a.m. Persian Gulf time, 5:17 a.m. London, 6:17 a.m. Frankfurt, reaches European pre-market participants who are already alert to developments in an active conflict, but who have limited ability to verify breaking information through institutional channels before their trading systems react to newsfeed inputs. The IRGC's planners chose their moment with a precision that the Treasury Department's post-incident analysts will note in their assessment of the operation's design intelligence. The countermeasures developed from the incident cover 3 categories. The first is technical, a supplementary authentication layer for DSC distress alerts from U.S. military vessel MMSI numbers, requiring a cryptographic verification code on a secondary channel within 60 seconds before the alert is treated as confirmed by U.S. military monitoring systems. The layer cannot be applied to the international monitoring network. Foreign stations will continue receiving unauthenticated alerts. but it provides an authenticated confirmation capability that can reach Allied monitoring systems simultaneously with the cancellation. The second is procedural, a pre-cleared rapid response public affairs protocol for false distress signals, reducing the response time from the 4 minutes and 22 seconds of March 11th to an estimated 90 seconds. The third is analytical, a standing requirement to flag any DSC alert from a U.S. military MMSI to the duty intelligence officer within 30 seconds, enabling classified verification to run in parallel with the cancellation broadcast. These three measures would have reduced the impact window from 14 minutes to an estimated 3 to 4 minutes, and would have produced a correction reaching major news organizations before the market movement reached its observed peak. The after-action documentation records the following: 11 seconds of broadcast time on a public maritime distress frequency, 1 MMSI number from a public database, 22 words reflecting access to a document with fewer than 400 recipients, a transmission origin on a platform absent from all surveillance layers, 14 minutes of measurable impact across financial markets, news media, legislative channels, foreign embassies, and allied governments, 1 Brent crude movement of $4.80 per barrel, a 1.4% S&P futures drop before correction, 6 congressional inquiries, 2 embassy contacts, 1 Allied head of government call to the White House Situation Room at 9:28 a.m., an estimated $2.4 billion in total transaction value executed on false information during the 14-minute window, 0 kinetic expenditure by the adversary, 0 personnel exposure at the moment of execution, 0 damage to any naval asset, and 1 ongoing investigation into a controlled distribution document whose specific phrases appeared in a transmission from an unmanned platform in open water, 127 nautical miles from the ship it claimed to be. The most efficient weapon in a modern information environment is not the one that destroys the target. It is the one that makes every institution watching the conflict believe, for 14 minutes, that the target has already been destroyed, and then calculates what 14 minutes of that belief is worth in aggregate across every market, every newsroom, every legislature, and every allied government that was monitoring the same frequency. The most efficient weapon in a modern information conflict is not the one that destroys its target. It is the one that makes every institution watching the conflict believe, for 14 minutes, that the target has already been destroyed, and then asks what those 14 minutes of belief are worth in aggregate across every market, every newsroom, every legislature, and every allied government that was monitoring the same frequency at the same moment. The answer varies by institution. Across all of them simultaneously, measured in transaction volume, political attention, and diplomatic uncertainty, it is a number that the adversary's planners understood before they transmitted. They built the operation to reach that number. They reached it. The Lincoln was undamaged throughout. The confidence of everyone watching cost considerably more. The IRGC's operational investment in the March 11th transmission was measured not in missiles, not in platforms, and not in personnel risk. It was measured in the cost of 1 pre-programmed maritime radio unit, 1 unmanned surface platform or aerial delivery vehicle, and the months of patient collection that produced knowledge of the Lincoln's MMSI number, emergency communication vocabulary, and the pre-market trading window geometry of European equity markets. Against that investment, the operation produced market movements affecting trillions of dollars in global asset prices for 14 minutes, political pressure reaching the highest levels of the U.S. government's operational chain, and a controlled distribution document investigation that will consume counterintelligence resources for months. The return on investment ratio of the March 11th operation, measured in impact per dollar of adversary expenditure, exceeds by orders of magnitude any kinetic operation of comparable duration conducted against the same target, set during Epic Fury's entire operational arc.